So my name is Guy Kawasaki, and I live in Silicon Valley, California, specifically Atherton, California. And I'm here today to talk to you about entrepreneurship. I have been to Madrid and Barcelona several times, so I have truly enjoyed your country. And well, I'll just give you, first, I want to apologize for something. And the apology that I make on behalf of 999,099 Americans is for Donald Trump. I hope you don't condemn my entire country because of one person. So I want to apologize to him. He does not represent America, okay, just so you know. I feel it's very important to clarify that whenever I speak anywhere around the country or around the world. I'm going to talk to you today about the art of the start. I'll tell you a little bit about my background first. I worked for Apple from 1983 to 1987. I was Apple's software evangelist. So my job was to convince people to write Macintosh software and hardware. How many of you use Macintoshes in this room? Oh, I love this country. So I worked in the Macintosh division. I worked for Steve Jobs. The Macintosh division was probably the largest collection of egomaniacs in America. And that's saying a lot because America has a lot of egomaniacs. And well, we held that record for about 30 years. It was recently broken by Facebook, but we held the record for quite a while. Because we worked for Steve, we had very special rules inside the company. We had unlimited supplies of fresh juice. And I know that today that doesn't sound like much because you see the movie or you read the books about Google and they have free sushi, free Thai food, free massages, free dental, free medical. They pick you up at your house, you know, everything. But believe it or not, just to show you how old I am, in the 1980s when I worked for the Macintosh division, free juice was a big deal. The group, back then, Apple was divided into the Apple II division, which was making all the money because it was actually shipping. And there was the Macintosh division, which was not shipping, so we were spending all the money. And if you are an accounting student, in accounting terms, if you looked at the Apple P&L in the mid-'80s, the P, or profit, was Apple II, and the L, or loss, was Macintosh. We were such bad people, though, that we would not let Apple II division employees into our building. And so they quickly figured out that they were not being allowed into a building that they were paying for. So that upset them a lot, and they came up with a great joke about the Macintosh division employees, which was, how many Mac employees does it take to screw in a light bulb? And the answer is one. The Mac employee holds up the light bulb and expects the universe to revolve around him. For those of you, the minority in this audience who use Windows, the Microsoft version of this joke is, how many Microsoft employees does it take to screw in a light bulb? And the answer to that is none, because Bill Gates has declared darkness the new standard. I have been watching high-tech speakers for about 30 years now. And I've noticed two key points about high-tech speakers. Perhaps ones in Spain are different, but in America, the two key points are, first, almost all of them suck. And almost all of them go long. They speak too long. And if you suck and your speech is short, that's okay. And if you're great and your speech is long, also okay. But if you suck and go long, that's like being stupid and arrogant. It is the worst possible case. And so what I do for my speeches is I use a top 10 format. That way you know I have exactly 10 key points. You know approximately how long I will suck if you think I suck. So this is the top 10 points. I have been an entrepreneur. I've been an investor as a venture capitalist. I've also been an advisor. I have a lot of startup background. I wish I could tell you that I did everything in this presentation correctly. Much of this presentation, what I did wrong, so I'm telling you what to do right, what I did wrong. Okay, these are my top 10 tips for the art of starting a company. So, on this screen, now the Wi-Fi thing came up again. Maybe I should just log in and get rid of this once and for all. Maybe not. I give up. Okay, so the first thing that I want to communicate about successful startups, tech startups in particular. You may believe from the outside looking in, particularly at Silicon Valley companies, that Silicon Valley companies, the tech companies in America, they have very, very all-encompassing plans that they figured out at the very start of their company that they would have a computer and they would have a phone and a tablet and a music device and an online service. And if you're Microsoft, you would have an operating system, you would have an applications business, you would have a gaming business, you would have a search business. And you tend to think that these people, these geniuses of tech businesses had it all planned. And I want to tell you that nothing could be further from the truth. The companies that you've heard of today from America, they started by asking very, very simple questions. Not questions about worldwide domination, but simple questions like this. Therefore, what? The way this question works is you have a vision for how the world will evolve. And then you ask yourself, based on this vision, therefore, what will people need? For example, it's going back in history 15 years. You have figured out that everybody will have a phone. And that phone will have a camera. And that phone with a camera will be on a high-speed network so that you can be almost anywhere in the world and upload pictures. If you thought that that was going to happen, therefore, what company would you create? This could be the genesis of a company like Snapchat, right? They knew that this was going to happen. I use the word knew loosely because nobody truly knows. So if you knew that phones would have cameras and would be on an internet, then you might start the Flickr, you might start a SmugMug. But it starts with this very simple question. Knowing what you know or thinking what you're thinking, therefore, what will be a company? A second, oh my God, I'm just having computer issues tonight. The second point is, isn't this interesting? So the way this works is you're an engineer, you're a scientist, perhaps you're trying to test a hypothesis, perhaps you're trying to create something very purposeful, very specific, and you fail. You fail. You have an accident. It's a bad outcome. But the outcome, though it is not what you wanted, is interesting nonetheless. So the classic example that everybody uses is Post-it pads. 3M is in the industrial supplies business. It was trying to make a very strong glue. By accident, it made a very weak glue. So weak that you could stick things with this glue on something and pull it off and it would leave no trace. And people asked, isn't this interesting? And this is the birth of Post-it. It was a total fail from the original goal. Isn't this interesting? Next thing, I am just having, no, it is a combination of things here. If you would give me the name and password and I could sign on once and forever. Third thing is there a better way? So the way "is there a better way" works is you're two guys in a garage, two gals in a garage, and you're frustrated. And you think, well, why is it that we have to work for a large government agency? Why is it that we have to work for a large company? Why is it that we have to go to a university to get use of computers? Why is that? Isn't there a better way? and you start Apple. So what I'm trying to communicate with point one in the art of the start is, don't believe that the great tech successes started out with a big master plan. They started out with very simple questions. We see how phones are going to have cameras. Therefore, what company should we start? We try an experiment and we fail, but the failure is nonetheless interesting. Isn't this interesting? Maybe we can do something with our failure. And is there a better way? Why is it that we have to drive to a computer? Why can't the computer come to us? 3 simple questions that can lead to 3 great companies. The second point is to make what's called an MVVVP. You may have, or you probably have heard of the concept of the MVP, the minimal viable product. I would make the case that we need to add 2 more V's to this concept. The 2 more V's are, first of all, that something is viable, but also that it is valuable. For example, you could make something that's viable, i.e. you could make money on it, but it is not valuable. It doesn't change the world. And I think the test for entrepreneurship is that you're doing something that not only makes money, but also improves people's lives, that it is valuable. And the final V is that it is validating. That is, it supports your thesis, it supports your vision, it supports your assumptions, how you think the world will evolve. So as you create this product, I want you to ask yourself, are we creating something that we can make money at? Of course, viability. But also, are we contributing to society? And finally, are we validating our vision for how the world will evolve? The MVVVP. MVP is not enough. Add viable, valuable, and validating. Step 2. Step 3 is to get going. I've met many entrepreneurs, and many of them are so obsessed with creating the perfect pitch, the perfect plan, the perfect forecast, that they think that the most important step is to use PowerPoint and to use Word and to use Excel. Those are not the 3 key features of entrepreneurship. They are not the 3 key applications of entrepreneurship. The most important thing is that you get going. That is, you start building a prototype. So let's talk about this. Many people, they are trying to avoid an embarrassment. They are trying to avoid something that makes them cringe, that makes them embarrassed about what they ship. But I will tell you that you should forgive yourself. You should give yourself greater flexibility, greater permission to fail. Because when you look back, and if you say to yourself, my God, version 1 of our product makes me cringe. I am embarrassed. I look at the first version of Macintosh. Macintosh was 128K of RAM. We thought that was an ocean of RAM. Thanks to my efforts, there was no software. It was black and white. It was slow. It had a slow network. It was inadequate storage. There's so many things that were wrong with the Mac 128K. I cringe when I think that we thought that computer was so good. And yet, it was so great. And so you have to give yourself permission to do something cringeworthy. Arguably, if you look back on your first version and you don't cringe, you probably shipped too late. By definition, you'll probably cringe if you do it right. That's point number 1. Point number 2 is when you start your company, you need to find people who are complementary to you and soulmates. Complementary means that they have skills that you don't. Many companies make a mistake and they hire engineers and nothing else. It's an engineering founder who hires more engineers. And that is a very big mistake, because if you think about it, you need somebody at a very fundamental level. You need somebody to make the product, and you need someone to sell the product. Steve Wozniak makes the product. Steve Jobs sells the product. And so as you create your founding team, don't get all engineers, because then you'll have no one to sell the product. Don't get all salespeople because you have nothing to sell. You need people who complement each other. And you also need soulmates. And by soulmates, I mean that the course of your company will be difficult. It will be challenging. So you need to be on the same page with your founders. You need to agree that you're all building a company that's built to last, or you're building a company that you're trying to flip very quickly. You need to agree that you're going to dedicate your life to this company, or it's a part-time endeavor. But you all need to have roughly the same expectations of the company. Because if somebody thinks that they're going to work part-time and quickly sell the company, and the rest of the people think they're going to dedicate their lives to it, and they never want to sell the company, you'll have problems from the very beginning. Find complementary soulmates. And the third point is to make a mantra. A mantra is a 2 or 3 word description of why your company should exist. You know, many companies make mission statements. These mission statements are 50 or 60 words long. They try to encompass every possible stakeholder, the employees, the customers, the vendors, the partners. And it sickens me. You can never, ever describe a company for so many groups, for so many people in a succinct way that is memorable. Right? In America, we have mission statements along the lines of, we endeavor to create a product that exceeds the expectations of our customers while providing a profitable return to our shareholders, while enabling our employees to self-actualize their life goals, while impacting the environment and killing as few whales and dolphins as possible. Okay? That's your typical American mission statement. I want you to make a mantra, 2 or 3 words. So the mantra of Canva, the company that I work for now, is democratize design. 2 words. I'm on the board of trustees of Wikipedia. Wikipedia is in the business of 2 words, democratizing knowledge. 2 or 3 words. Apple, productivity and creativity. Nike, authentic athletic performance. 2 or 3 words. 2 or 3 words that everybody in your company understands, everybody in your company agrees with. If anybody was to ask somebody at your company, what do you stand for? Everybody should say the mantra. We democratize design. We stand for authentic athletic performance. Next point, after you make the mantra, is to define a business model. I think the key to defining a business model is to be very specific. Many people, when they create a company, they have a very generalized business model. It's because they think by having a very vague and general business model, they will not eliminate markets that they someday may want to enter. I think that is a mistake. At the start of a company, you have to be very specific, so specific. Your mentality should be exactly who in this company, in this world, who has your money in his or her pocket? And how do you get your money out of their pocket into your pocket? So you don't say that our target is software. That's our business model. You don't even say that it's enterprise software. You say that it is enterprise software for the biotech industry, specifically the process of federal approval of drugs to help the person who is administering the program for the FDA testing of drugs manage his or her database of patients. You want to be that specific. The second point about the business model is to keep it simple. Many entrepreneurs are tempted to have a very complex business model. And I think that that is a mistake. Fundamentally, what you'd like is a very simple business model.
La vida es un modelo de negocio muy sencillo. Disculpen, pero está volviendo.
Sell it for €5. And when you come up with these people where they have very clever business models with tax structures and offshore corporations and all that kind of stuff, it's so hard to innovate on a product, so hard to innovate on a service. It would just compound your challenges to also innovate on a business model. Keep your business model simple. And the final point, and a controversial point, I'm going to try this one more time because I refuse to believe that I can't make this work, is to ask women. Now, let me tell you why I believe you should always ask women about your business model and never men. Men have a fundamental genetic flaw. The fundamental genetic flaw is that men always want to kill things. Men want to kill other people. Men want to kill plants. They want to kill animals. They'd like to kill countries. They'd like to kill political systems. And if you're in business, a man would like to kill the competition. A man would like to kill the competition's product. By definition, we all look at it that way. So when you ask a man, should I create a product to kill PowerPoint? Every man will say yes. Should I create a product to kill YouTube? Every man will say yes. Kill iOS? Yes. Kill Microsoft? Yes. Kill Cisco? Yes. Because men can't get around their DNA flaw that they want to kill stuff. Women, by contrast, do not have this fundamental genetic flaw. Women are nurturing. And so when you ask a woman, should I create a product to kill PowerPoint? A woman would look at that very differently. Because you know what? Very few customers wake up in the morning saying, how can I help a company kill PowerPoint? That is just not their perspective. Women get up in the morning, and normal people get up in the morning saying, how can I be more creative? How can I be more productive? How can I make my pitches more effective? You know, why is it so hard to use PowerPoint? That's the perspective you want. It's very few people, very few of your potential customers want to help you kill your competition. Granted, if you make a great product, if you make a great service, an outcome may be that you kill the competition. But that's not why you're in business. Nobody buys something from you because they want to help you kill your competition. So I'm telling you right now, if you want a good opinion about your business and business model, ask women. Do not waste your time asking men. The next thing is to weave what I call a mat. You know, at the start of a company, it is a very beautiful feeling. Because once you have a company, it's full of compromises. You hired people you shouldn't have hired. You have crappy furniture that you wish you never bought. You have an architecture that was fundamentally flawed from the very beginning because you thought that the person you started the company with who became CTO, only because he was around with you that weekend you came up with this idea. The architecture is flawed, the employees are bad, the customers are a pain because the architecture is flawed, so they're angry about how the product performs. None of that is true when you start a company. When you start a company, you're going to do everything on time, everything perfect, everything right. And when you have such a clear field, when you have this blue ocean, it's so hard to stay focused because it's fun to hire, it's fun to design your logo, it's fun to be thinking about what your domain should be. It's fun to look at WordPress templates to help you design your website. All of that is so much fun. So this is a recommendation about the prioritization of what you do as a startup. The M in MAT stands for milestones. The most important thing for your startup is to focus on milestones, such as finish the design, finish the prototype. A milestone is something that you would call up your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, or wife, and you would say, honey, today we shipped. You would not call up your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, or wife and say, honey, today we ordered stationery. Okay? Ordering stationery is not a milestone. Ordering furniture is not a milestone. A milestone is we shipped, we sold, we collected. Those are milestones. So you start with the milestones. Next thing you do, you need to look at your assumptions. How many sales calls can we make per day? It's very important that you test this. So let me give you a typical Silicon Valley pitch for a company and show you how this kind of pitch leads to such flawed companies. America has roughly 300 million Americans. There are roughly 75 million owned dogs in America. Each dog eats 2 cans of dog food per day. Total addressable market for dog food in America, 150 million cans of dog food per day. And dogs, unlike a B2B business, dogs eat every day. This is more B2C, or more accurately, B2D. So, we have 365 days a year, with 150 million cans of dog food being consumed a day. So we take 150 million, and we multiply by 365, and my God, we get this humongous number, right? And how hard could it be to get a mere 1% of that market? 1% of 150 million cans of dog food per day is 1.5 million cans of dog food per day. 1.5 million cans of dog food per day times 365 is 500 or 600 million cans of dog food per day. And that is 1% market share. How hard could that be? And that's why there was pets.com in America. There's pets.com, mypets.com, lastminutepets.com. There were 10 ways to buy pieces of dead cows in cans in America. But that's the kind of assumption where you start from the top and you work down, right? I think a better test for you as an entrepreneur is that you start from the bottom and you work up. And so using the same kind of business, you'd say, well, using every black hat content marketing SEO trick that we know, we think we can get 100,000 uniques to our dog food website a month. 100,000 uniques. And let's be conservative. Let's say that of those 100,000 unique people, 1,000 buy a case of dog food per month. So 1,000 people buy a case of 20 cans. That's 20,000 cans per month. That is much closer to what will happen than 1.5 million per day. And so this is such an important step because you have to be a skeptic about your own company, your own business model, and ask, are we assuming that we can get 1% of 150 million per day? Or are we being realistic and using every trick we know? We think we can get 100,000 unique visitors, of which 1% or 1,000 will buy a case of dog food, which is 20. So 20 times 1,000 is a 20,000 market run, not 1.5 million a day run. This is the kind of test of an assumption. The third priority is to test your website, to launch your product, to actually get it into the marketplace. My experience has been, speaking of cringeworthy things, that you're much more likely to ship too late than you are too early. With something that's too early, you're afraid that you'll develop a bad reputation. But looking back at all the companies I've been involved with, I think that the key is not really what you ship as much as how fast you fix what you ship. So if you gave me a choice and said, well, we can ship early and fix fast, or we can ship late and fix slow, I would say ship early, fix fast. That would be the better paradigm. And the fourth point is tasks. So finally, having identified the milestones and the assumptions and the tests that you've done, finally you can do the task. A task is like hiring an engineer to finish the prototype so we can test our assumptions and launch our product. This is the pecking order of the priority of starting a company. Notice that nowhere on this list is boot PowerPoint, boot Excel, and boot Word, right? Fundraising is a means to an end. It is not the end in itself. And today, because of how the world has evolved, where hosting is much cheaper than ever before. You don't need to buy a server anymore. So infrastructure is much cheaper. You don't need as much commercial real estate because you'll have virtual teams all over the world. You don't need to pay for marketing because you'll use social media, and social media is fast and free and ubiquitous. You need much less money. And there's these beautiful things called crowdfunding with Kickstarter and Indiegogo. So there's an alternative to venture capital. So you need less money. There's alternative ways to raise money. Money is not the crucial step. It is about getting the prototype out. Next thing, number 6, is to tell your story. As an entrepreneur, you need to become a great storyteller. Okay? If you were to attend many tech conferences in America, you would see CEO after CEO come up on a stage like this and say, I have patent pending, curve jumping, paradigm shifting, enterprise class, scalable product. That's the 8 o'clock presentation. The 8:15 presentation is identical. Every CEO comes up and says the same thing. And so the first thing I want you to do when you tell your story is apply what I call the opposite test. And the way the opposite test works is you listen to your competition and you ask yourself, is he or she and I saying the opposite? Is your competition going up on a stage like this and saying, I have a piece of crap that is buggy, slow, hard to use, and cannot scale? Because if your competition is saying that, then fine, go up on the stage and say, I have a beautiful piece of software that's fast, bug-free, easy to learn, and can scale. But the odds are everybody's saying the same thing. So if you're not saying the opposite of what your competition is saying, you essentially are saying nothing. Apply the opposite test. The next thing is to make it personal. Let me tell you some personal stories that started companies. Story number 1. I've already told you about it. We were frustrated because we couldn't use a computer unless we drove to HP, or we drove to Stanford University, or we worked for Atari. And we thought there must be a better way. Why are computers so big, so expensive, so hard to use? So Woz and I, we started Apple to make a personal computer, because personal computers mean that they're small and they're cheap and they're easy to use. The genesis of Apple. Pierre Omidyar, the founder of eBay, tells a story that at the time that he started eBay, his wife was a toy collector, or his girlfriend then, now wife. And so she needed a way to sell her Pez dispenser, the candy dispenser, online. There was no way for her to sell Pez dispensers online. So he started eBay to help her sell her Pez dispensers. That's the genesis of eBay. Incidentally, that is a total bullshit story made up after the success of eBay. Just FYI. But it is nonetheless a great story. It is a great story. So I'm telling you to make it personal because you wanted to use the computer, because your wife or girlfriend wanted to sell Pez dispensers online. Make it personal. Not about patent pending, curve jumping, paradigm shifting, enterprise class, scalable products. Make it personal. And third point is to embrace what I call the 10-20-30 rule. The most important numbers you could write down tonight, 10, 20, 30. The optimal number of slides in a PowerPoint presentation, a pitch, is 10. 10. If you just learn that tonight, you will do yourself a favor for the rest of your careers, all right? 10 slides. It's very difficult to even get 10 points across, 10 slides. Now, you're a smart audience, you're thinking I'm a hypocrite, right? So Guy, you're telling us to use 10 slides, you're on like number 40 already, right? What's up with that? Let me explain. You are not to me, okay? 10 slides. You use 10 slides. Now, why 20 minutes? You have a 1-hour slot. Why 20 minutes? It's because in the world, if you took a look, roughly 90% of the world uses Windows laptops. And I know from personal experience, when somebody walks into a room with a Windows laptop, it's probably going to take 40 minutes for that person to make it work with the projector. If everybody used a Macintosh, this would be the 10-60-30 rule. Okay? And the 30 is the ideal font size. I think that the minimum font size for your presentation should be 30 points. A very good rule of thumb for you, figure out who the oldest person is in the audience, divide his or her age by 2. If you're talking to 60-year-old people, 30 points. 50-year-old people, 25 points. Someday you may be pitching a 16-year-old venture capitalist, 8 points. Okay? But until that day, 10 slides, 20 minutes, 30 points. And I'm going to show you one more power tip. So, tip number 1, cut down to 10 slides. Tip number 2, be able to give these 10 slides in 20 minutes. Tip number 3, select all the text on every page and make it 30 points. And then you'll see how much you have to throw away. You're going to throw away a lot. A lot. You'll probably throw away 90% of your presentation. That's okay. And tip number 4, very, very powerful tip, is to make your background black. And let me tell you why. Because when you make your background black, it shows that you cared enough to make a master page and select a white font that is easier to read. This slide is easy to read. This slide also has an added advantage that no matter where I use this slide, no matter how the screen is physically made, you cannot tell where my slide ends and the outside frame begins because everything is black. Everything is black. When you use a white slide, what you're saying to the audience is, I am stupid, I am lazy, I booted PowerPoint, and I started typing in black. That's what you're saying. So I want you to look at this slide, and then I want you to look at the next slide. Same slide. Black text on white background. You tell me, which is the better slide? Same information. This slide or this slide? This is a crappy slide. All right? So if you just did those 4 things, you would be better than 95% of the people who make pitches in the world. I promise you. I'll tell you a funny story about this white versus black background. So one day I meet with an entrepreneur. It's about 11 in the morning. And he says, Guy, I just pitched. I have another 2 or 3 hours and I pitch again. I know you're an expert in pitching, Guy. Do you have any advice for me? And this entrepreneur was a black entrepreneur. And I said to him, is your background black? And he says to me, yeah, I'm from Atlanta, from a multiracial family. I said, no, I can see you're black. I want to know if your PowerPoint background is black. Trust me when I tell you, black is the new black. Okay, just use a black background. Number 7 is my recommendation that you hire infected people. This means that you're going to have to ignore the irrelevant. There are 2 kinds of irrelevancies here when you hire for a startup. You know, everybody knows or thinks that you should hire someone with a good education background and a good work experience, right? Work experience and education, it comes down to that. I would ask you to add a 3rd variable, which is, does the person get it? And does the person love what we do? Now there's 3 variables. So you may find a candidate who has the perfect education, the perfect work experience, but doesn't love what you do. In this case, what's irrelevant is the perfect background and the perfect education. Discipline yourself, learn to ignore that. If the person has the right education and right work experience, but doesn't love what we do, don't hire the person. The other kind of irrelevancy is where the person does love what you do and does get it, but doesn't have the right education and doesn't have the work experience. In this case, you need to learn to ignore the other kind of irrelevancy, which is the lack of a perfect education and work experience. This is my case. When I went to work for Apple, I had a degree in psychology from Stanford, never taken a computer class in my life. After Stanford, I went to law school for 2 weeks and I quit law school, right? which is a sign of my intelligence because most lawyers practice law for 20 years and discover they're miserable. I did it after 2 weeks. After law school, or my attendance at law school, I went and got an MBA. And that MBA was in marketing, so still no tech background. After my MBA, I went and I worked for a jewelry manufacturer, small family-owned jewelry manufacturer. And so if you looked at my resume, you'd say, should we even interview Guy Kawasaki? Undergraduate degree in psychology, the easiest major possible at Stanford. Dropped out of law school, so he's a quitter. Got an MBA in marketing, but no technology whatsoever. And then all of that would be okay if he went to work for a tech company and started getting tech experience. But no, he went to work for a jewelry manufacturer counting diamonds. This would not be exactly the ideal candidate for Apple Computer to use to evangelize the Macintosh operating system to software developers. The truth is that the only reason why I got hired at Apple is because of nepotism, which is my Stanford roommate hired me. I'm not being modest. I got hired only because of my friendship with this person. There's no other explanation. That said, I saw Macintosh, and when I saw Macintosh the first time, it was a religious experience. The clouds parted, the sun began to shine, and angels began to sing. Macintosh was the most fundamental change in computing that I had ever seen. It was love at first sight. And so I think that at some level, the people at Apple understood that, man, he may not have the right background, he may not have the right education, but man, he gets it. He understands how Macintosh is going to change the world. So you need to ignore the irrelevant. Oops, I did it again. Next thing is to hire better than yourself. In the Mac division, we had a saying, A players hire A players. I think an even better version of this saying is A players hire A plus players. So if you're an A player, you hire someone who's better than you at what you do, not worse. Your ego is strong enough to think that, I may be the CEO, but I want someone better at finance and engineering and marketing and operations than me. If I am the CEO and I'm the best person at everything in this company, that's a pathetic company. Because by definition, one person can't be good at everything. So you need to hire better than yourself. The hardest test. Easy to say you believe, the hardest thing to do because it takes a great sense of personal self-confidence. Hire better than yourself. It should be a source of pride for you that the people who work for you are better at what they do than you are. And finally, the shopping center test. The way the shopping center test works is you go to a shopping center and you see somebody who's interviewing at your company. That person has not yet seen you. The distance between you and the person is like from me to the back of that wall, right? So I know that person over there is interviewing at my company. That person has not yet seen me. We're at the shopping center. So what can I do? I can go down there and just go straight to that person and say, hi, how are you? I hope you'll join our company. We're going to change the world. Do you have any questions for me? How can I get you to come work for our company? That's one reaction. Second reaction is, shopping center is not that big. If just by happenstance we get face-to-face, I will say hello. Third reaction is, I'm going to get in my car and drive to another shopping center. I would make the case that for a startup, the initial reaction should be, I'm going to go straight over there and say hello. That should be your gut reaction to a person. That's about hiring people. Next point is to socialize. I think one of the great advantages of being an entrepreneur today is social media. My God, it's fast, it's free, it's everywhere. Thank God for social media. Now, you don't have to buy advertising in the Wall Street Journal. You don't need to buy ads. Think about that. The only place I think you should even consider buying an ad is Facebook, because it has such great marketing, targeting marketing. So let's talk about socialism. Socialism, as opposed to the political socialism, is about using social media as your marketing platform. The first thing you need to do is you need to perfect your profiles. Your profiles of yourself. Your profile, your avatar should be just your face. Not you and your dog, you and your cat, you and your surfboard, you and your Mustang, you and your buddies, you and the sunset, you and Barcelona, you and somebody else. It's just your face. Your face is to convince people that you're trustworthy, that you're likable, and you're competent. That's the purpose of an avatar. That cover photo behind you should tell your story. What are you interested in? What is your passion? Cover photo tells story, avatar shows your face, right? Now, if you're a brand, obviously your avatar is your logo. The cover photo should show what your brand stands for. That's step number one. Step number two is to embrace what I call the Wikipedia model. So the way Wikipedia works is there's no advertising. There's no fee to use Wikipedia. We believe in free information. But every December, we run a fundraiser. And this fundraiser means that you're going to get a really ugly banner every time you go to a Wikipedia page. And this banner is, I've seen various designs, and much to my amazement, I will tell you that the ugliest ones generate the best response. I don't know why, but it is absolutely true. So what is the Wikipedia model? The Wikipedia model is that we provide such great content, 365 days a year, that a few weeks a year we're going to ask you for a donation. And we get extraordinary success with this. And it's because people want to reciprocate. They want to pay back Wikipedia for all the work that has gone into documenting and democratizing knowledge. That's how you should be thinking. Your social media should be about providing value. Value to your customers and your prospective customers. If you are a restaurant, it should not just be about your restaurant. It should be about how to prepare food. Right? It's knowledge, it's content marketing. And then you earn the right to run your Wikipedia banner. Every once in a while, promote your restaurant. But the ratio is about 20-1. 20 posts that provide value, 1 post that's a promotion. Embrace the Wikipedia model. The next thing is to pass what I call the Reshare test. The way the Reshare test is, whenever you post something to social media, ask yourself, is this thing so good that not only will my followers like it, will they risk their reputation and also share it? So this is the difference between tipping somebody and telling somebody to go to the restaurant, right? You tip the waiter. That's like a like. That's like a thumbs up. That's like a +1. But when you actually go to the office the next day or go to school the next day and you tell people you must eat at the restaurant, when you do that, you are risking your reputation. Because if people go to the restaurant and the restaurant is lousy, your reputation suffers. Resharing is telling people to go to the restaurant. Resharing is, I saw this post by Guy Kawasaki. It is so interesting. I'm sharing it to my followers. And this is how you expand your platform. Because people who follow you are going to expose you to their followers. This is a very high bar to pass. Not just that people might like it, but they like it so much that they will reshare it to others. Pass the Reshare test. 3 keys to social media marketing. The 9th point is to seed the clouds. This is an American euphemism for making it rain. Making it rain is a euphemism for sales. How do you get sales? I have a theory that in startups, all the niceties about partnership and strategy and all those lofty things, all of that disappears. The key to startups is sales fixes everything. As long as you're making sales, as long as you have revenue, everything else can work. And if you have investors, God help you, then if you have sales, they're going to leave you alone. Because 90% of their portfolio has no sales. So they're worried about that 90%. The 10% that has sales, they're going to leave you alone. Guess what? When you have sales, morale is good. Question is, did good sales create morale, or did good morale create sales? That's a very interesting question. I would make the case that good sales created morale. And you could also, sort of apply this same test. Everybody says, well, you have to be passionate to be an entrepreneur, right? Well, duh. Yes, because being an entrepreneur is very difficult. Being an entrepreneur is challenging. Being an entrepreneur is lonely. So you say, well, if you're really passionate, then you'll achieve success in sales. But I will also tell you that I've observed the opposite, which is, if just by good fortune, if you happen to, by accident, get on a rocket ship and the rocket ship takes off, sales explode, you will get passionate about whatever it sells. And so this is another question, did passion create sales, or did sales create passion? In a theoretical case, which would be an extreme case, let's just go back in time and let's say that instead of continuing to work for Apple, I went to work for Microsoft. Okay? And I got to tell you, I really think that Windows is lousy. It's just ugly, slow, buggy, all that kind of stuff. But let's just say, for some reason, I was dumb enough or smart enough, depending on how you want to look at it, to leave Apple and go to work for Microsoft, right? I have no passion for Windows at all. But as soon as I get there, Windows shoots up to the moon and the stock goes from 20 to 2,000. I would tell you, I would probably get pretty passionate about Windows. So I'm giving this whole diatribe for you to remember. Sales fixes everything. Point number one, let 100 flowers blossom. Let 100 flowers blossom means that take your best shot at positioning and branding your product or service, but then step back and see what the market is saying. Ultimately, the market will position you. So this means that, with Macintosh, we thought we had a spreadsheet database and word processing machine. Come to find out, we had a desktop publishing machine. Did we plan that? Absolutely not. We like to say we planned it because we like to retroactively reinvent history, but it is not true. Okay? Aldous PageMaker desktop publishing was a gift from God to Apple. It saved Apple. No PageMaker, no desktop publishing, no Apple. No Apple, you'd all have phones with real keypads. You'd have phones where the battery lasted for more than half a day. You'd have phones where the GPS actually worked. It would be a different world today. Okay? Aldous PageMaker was a gift from God to Apple. I believe in God, and one of the reasons why I believe in God is there is no other explanation for Apple's continued survival than the existence of God. So, we thought we had a spreadsheet database word processing machine. Come to find out, a blossom bloomed called desktop publishing. My message here is don't be proud. You think you have a spreadsheet database word processing machine, but the market embraces you as a desktop publishing machine. As an entrepreneur, lesson number one, take the money. Don't be proud. Take the money. Sales fixes everything. In Silicon Valley, the way we work, we throw 20 things against the wall. 19 of them fall down. One sticks. We go up to the wall, we paint the bullseye around it, and we declare victory. We hit the bullseye. Okay? That's how it works in California. Don't ever believe that we know exactly what's going to stick on the wall. Number two, enable test drives. Basically, you're saying to people, I think you're smart. Because I think you're smart, I'm not going to try to bludgeon you into becoming my customer. Download my software, try my online service, take my car out for a drive, then you decide. It's a much better intellectual approach to sales. Third point is to find the influencers. Now this sounds like a duh-ism, as we say in California, like duh. Of course you're going to find the influencers, Guy. What were you going to do? Find the people who don't have power? But the influencers, I think, has significantly changed. Prior to social media, I would say it was a pyramid. At the top of the pyramid was the Wall Street Journal in America, in tech anyway. So if the Wall Street Journal said to use a spreadsheet, you use the spreadsheet. The product would be successful. It was that simple. Walt Mossberg at the Wall Street Journal says, use Lotus 123. You use Lotus 123, Lotus is successful. It was that easy. So this meant that much of PR and marketing in America for tech for a long time was sucking up to the Wall Street Journal. Because you lived for that review. That review would make you. In the book business, you used to suck up to the New York Times book review. If the New York Times book review said, read this book, everybody read the book, you got a bestseller. It was that simple. But social media has changed that. It has flipped it. And now I think that a bunch of lonelyboy15 at AOL.com is what makes the market. That lonely boy 15 with 15 followers, not working for the Wall Street Journal, tells people to use this new social media thing, to read this book, to try this software. And lonely boy 15 makes the market. And now, what used to be at the top of the pyramid, the Wall Street Journal, TechCrunch, Verge, Mashable, what used to make companies successful, now they report on what companies are successful. I'm not advocating that you ignore The Verge, Mashable, TechCrunch, any of those things. They are still powerful. But I'm saying you need to understand that you need to find the true influencers. And it could be Lonely Boy 15. Lonely Boy 15, 15 followers, still on AOL, lives with his mother. Okay? Sleeps on Buzz Lightyear sheets. Doesn't work for the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post. You need to find these people. They're very difficult to find because they're not on the marquee of a big publication. So this means you need to cover the earth with your software. You need to enable lots of people to test drive your software. And if you get enough people to do it, enough Lonely Boy 15s, then the Wall Street Journal and every publication will cover you. You know what? Nobody thought that Twitter would be successful when Twitter first came out. No Wall Street Journal article declared Twitter the new successful nano communications tool. It was people at South by Southwest, a tech conference, who used it to find the best parties. They made Twitter successful. And eventually the Wall Street Journal had to cover Twitter. It's not because they discovered Twitter or they made Twitter. Nobodies are the new somebodies in this market. It's a very, very different world. Number 10. My final point is don't let the clowns grind you down. The clowns are going to try to grind you down. They're going to tell you it can't be done. It shouldn't be done. Cannot be done out of Madrid. It has to be done out of Silicon Valley. All this kind of BS. There are two kinds of clowns in the world. I like to call them bozos. There are two kinds of bozos in the world. One bozo is slovenly, disgusting, body odor, pocket protector, propeller head, Japanese watch, rusty car. And you look at that person and you say, my God, you are a loser. Right? That's not the dangerous bozo. Because there's going to be some self-selection here. Only a loser would listen to a loser. So if you are a loser and you listen to a loser, you are beyond hope. I cannot help you. The dangerous bozo is the winner bozo. The winner bozo dresses in all black. The winner bozo has stuff that ends in I, like Armani, Maserati, Lamborghini, Ferrari. Audi is an exception. And you look at that person and you think, rich, famous must equal smart. As you go through your life, you will learn that rich and famous 50% of the time equals lucky. Don't necessarily listen to rich and famous people, right? For example, I caution you to not make your decision about religion based on Tom Cruise. I would also caution you to not learn about how to raise your family by watching what the Kardashians do, okay? Rich and famous doesn't necessarily parse to smart. Doesn't necessarily parse to dumb either. But 50% of the time parses to lucky. So you have to be very careful. Now I think that bozosity, which is this disease I call, is just like the flu. And how do we fight the flu? Well, you try to wash your hands and never get the flu bug. That's one way to avoid it. But really everybody should get a flu shot, right? And what is a flu shot? A flu shot is a little bit of flu so that your body builds up resistance when it encounters big flu. So you get little flu, so you can resist big flu. Duh. Sounds like a plan, right? So I believe in this biotech model. So I'm going to expose you to a little bit of bososity now, so that when you encounter bososity in your career as an entrepreneur, you will have already built up the resistance. You will have a foundation by which to reject negativism. Okay? So here we go. So first of all, the chairman of IBM in 1943 allegedly said that there is a world market for 5 computers. Chairman of IBM said this: I have 5 Macintoshes in my house. I have all the computers he anticipated in the world in my house today. How do you like that? This is the chairman of IBM. Imagine if you're Steve Jobs and you met Thomas Watson in 1943. And he said, well, there's only going to be a world market of 5 computers, Steve. Keep learning COBOL, work on an IBM mainframe, because maybe you'll work on one of those 5. All right? There would be no Apple. This telephone has too many shortcomings to be seriously considered as a means of communication. The device is inherently of no value to us. 1876, Western Union writes off telephones. Oops. How many of you use Western Union lately? No, Western Union, I think it should be Square, Bitcoin, anything like that. PayPal, any of those. But so hard to go from telegraph to internet if you write off telephone in the middle. It's too big a chasm to cross. In America, there used to be an ice harvesting industry in the 1900s. This meant that when people wanted to get ice, they would buy it from an ice harvester. The ice harvester, guess what? Went out to a frozen lake or a pond with a saw and a horse and a sleigh, cut blocks of ice. This is 1900, right? Cut the ice, sell it to people. Ice lasts for quite a while, actually. That made people's lives a lot more convenient. 30 years go by. All ice harvesters are wiped out. They're wiped out by ice factories. Now, you can have ice any city, any time of year. Doesn't have to be cold. Doesn't have to be a frozen lake. You have your personal ice factory there, right? That delivers ice to your house. All the ice factories are gone. Well, not all. There's still some ice factories, but most ice factories are gone because of the next curve, which is the refrigerator curve. Now, instead of the iceman in an ice truck delivering ice to your house, you had your own ice factory called a refrigerator, a PC, a personal chiller. And the very important lesson you should look at this historical curves of ice is that nobody went from ice harvester to ice factory to refrigerator company. Because the ice harvester defined their business as we cut blocks of ice in the winter. They did not embrace factories. The factory designed their business as we freeze water centrally and deliver frozen blocks of water. That's the business we're in. They did not embrace refrigerators. And so if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, you need to get to the next curve or create the next curve. You need to define your business in terms of the benefits that you provide. If you provide productivity and creativity, it doesn't matter if it's a computer or a phone or a tablet. It doesn't matter if it's an online service. If you define your business as we increase people's convenience and cleanliness, then you could start by cutting blocks of ice. You could move to freezing blocks of ice. Then you could move to making this mechanical contraption called a refrigerator, and arguably you could jump the curve again and get into biotech, right? But you have to define yourself in terms of the benefits you provide and not the actual process that you have at any given point. One more quote. There's no reason why anyone would want a computer in their home. Ken Olsen said this. Great entrepreneur, great innovator. Said this in 1977. Imagine if you were Steve Jobs or Steve Wozniak, right? So you're starting Apple, and everybody's telling you, get a world-class advisor or two. Who would be a better advisor for a startup computer company than Ken Olsen, founder of DEC? Have you even heard of DEC? It died before you were born. DEC was a humongously successful mini computer. You don't know what a mini computer is? Oh, man. Just trust me. This guy was very successful and very famous. And so, imagine if you're Steve Jobs or Steve Wozniak and you go to a computer show and you see Ken Olsen in the elevator and you give him your elevator pitch and you say, Mr. Olsen, we know you're the founder of DEC. You have many computers. We have a different vision for computing. Computing should be small, cheap, easy to use. So small, so cheap, so easy to use, Mr. Olsen. Anyone could have a computer in their house. And Mr. Olsen, as the elevator door opens up, says, son, there's no reason why anybody would want a computer in their house. If they wanted to use a computer, they just drive back to their office and use a DEC mini computer. So don't ruin your lives. Learn how to program COBOL and come work for DEC. There would be no Apple. 3 examples of bozosity by very successful entities and people. You need to learn to ignore the bozosity. Now, I wish I could tell you that every time someone says you'll fail, it means you'll succeed. That is not true. But if every time somebody says you fail, you listen to them and you don't try, you'll never know. And that is the worst outcome of all, not knowing. And that is the art of the start 2.0. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.